Okay, so today we are going to talk about step 5, synthesis, or to synthesize. So I'm going to explain to you guys here in a little bit why it's so important, but this is our last step. So this is what's going to lead to us making those really good inferences, okay? So when we synthesize, when we make a synthesis, step 1, first thing is read the text. That makes sense, right? How many of you guys have read a text and you have no idea what that text says, right? You get to the end of the page or you get to the end of the chapter and you spaced out the entire time and you don't even remember what you've just read. So while you read, you're going to use your reading voice and your thinking voice. We have talked about that thousands of times. You have practiced it. We're going to continue practicing it. So using your reading and your thinking voice as you read. You're also going to use retell or summarizing as you read. When you get done reading a page, if you're a good reader, you're constantly thinking about what did I just read. You're constantly summarizing what you've just read, whether you realize you're doing it or not. Those of you that struggle a little bit with reading, you're probably not doing that. So I suggest to you while you read, if that's something that's difficult for you to remember what you've read, is to use a Post-it note. At the end of every page or every couple pages, jot down a couple notes of what did you just read about. That's a good way to monitor your reading as you read. Because part of doing a synthesizing, is reading and being able to retell what you just read. Step 2 is to pause. As you read, you're pausing. You're gonna think, you're gonna question. We've talked a lot about questioning, which is step 4. We talked about it before you read. We're going to really start talking about it during reading as we continue. But pause, think, what did I just read? You're retelling, right? And then also you're thinking about it, you're questioning, why did the author put this? Why did the character react that way? Why isn't the character doing this? You're asking all of those kinds of questions. You're going to, once you've read and you've paused and you've thought about it, you're going to ponder or wonder or think about something. So you're going to ponder, you're going to do some more questioning. You're going to make connections. You're going to pull in your prior knowledge. You're going to talk about the viewpoint, the author's purpose, right? You're pondering, you're wondering, you're thinking. And then we're going to put it all together to combine that so that we can really start making that inference. We really want to be able to make an inference. You cannot make an inference without being able to read, to think about what you've read, and to combine those steps. We're going to practice it today. We're going to practice going through all these steps with a common text here in a second. And then the very last thing is to support. So you combine all these things together, you put it together to come up with your answer, and then you support your answer using details. Okay? So to synthesize is to put everything together. Are you with me so far? Okay, I want to show you something. So in the wonderful world of things, many things are explained as a pyramid. The food pyramid. What goes at the bottom of a food pyramid? Anybody know what goes at the bottom of a food pyramid? No. Food is the things at the bottom are what your body needs the most of, right? What you need the most of. When we talked about John Wooden's Pyramid of Success a little bit, we talked about friendship, hard work, competitive greatness, that goes at the bottom, right? What happens if I have something at the bottom of my pyramid, but it's not very strong? What would happen to my pyramid? Yeah, my whole pyramid would collapse, right? That's what these steps are doing. These steps are kind of building a pyramid. In the world of education, right, we have the thing that's called depth of knowledge, Bloom's taxonomy, all of these things, and it's kind of like a pyramid. We are taught, right, you guys have to have a really good base for things. The base for making an inference is retell. Retell is something you start to do in kindergarten, first thing in school, and really first grade. You guys all remember sitting in kindergarten and your teacher reading you the picture book, and she asks you, who were the main characters? What did the main characters do? Where did the story take place? Sound familiar? right? That all comes from the retell. If you look at our retell poster, who are the main characters? What is the setting? What happens? So this is basic. What did you guys have to do for e-learning yesterday?
We had to retell of 30 minutes of reading.
Yeah, you had to retell something, didn't you? I did not create an e-learning lesson for you to retell because I was bored and I was like, I don't feel like creating anything, so I'm just gonna have them do a retell. No, you are practicing this skill because it's important. If you cannot do this well, you can't do anything else, can you?
No.
Okay, the next step is main idea. Main idea, you really start to get into kind of in that 1st and 2nd grade. So you're able to retell what happens. Now, what's the main idea? If you can't tell me what happens in the story, can you tell me what the main part of the story is? Can you tell me what the main idea is if you can't summarize the story? No, right? So that's why this is so important on the bottom. The next one is visualization. And this is kind of a 2nd, 3rd, and even kind of going into a 4th grade standard. Because you're not just visualizing how something's described, but you're visualizing this is the first step to really making inferences. You're visualizing what the author means. What is the author trying to tell you? The author is giving you a visual of something, right? So sometimes you are conceptually visualizing the whole entire story or the theme of the story. Sometimes you are visualizing just a scene or what something looks like. So visualization covers a lot of ground, and it's something too, we're gonna spend a lot more time on all of these, right? Please put your scissors away. You don't need them for anything. The last one that we've talked about so far then is questioning. Questioning is a total different thing. Questioning is not just, what did the character do? That's a question. Questioning is before you read, which we've talked about, and during reading. Why did the character make that decision? Why did the character react that way? How would I react if that was me? What was the purpose of the author making the day sunny instead of cloudy? Or all of these different things, you're questioning as you read on different levels. So the higher you get, 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, the higher level of questioning you're going to do. And then the very last thing is what we've just talked about, synthesis. This is 6th grade and up. This is where you are going to be focused here on out in school. You might have to write a summary about something, but most of the questions that you have to answer about your reading, you are going to have to put all this together to be able to come up with an answer. Okay? The very first lesson, 7th grade reading taught this year, was about theme. Like, they don't go back really and talk about all of these. They're expecting you to come into 7th grade knowing all of this with a solid pyramid so they can continue building on top. You need a solid foundation. So if you are not taking your time to do these, oh, this is dumb, I've been doing main idea for 10 years now. I know how to write a summary, I've been writing summaries. You have to practice, right? LeBron James knows how to shoot free throws. Does he stop practicing free throw shooting? Right? No. He practices it all the time. Any basketball player, right? I knew in college how to serve a volleyball over a net. Guess what we did every single day at practice? Served over the net, right? Because it's important. You still have to practice those foundational skills, just with harder text. So later in the class today, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But you need to practice these skills with harder text so you're able to consistently synthesize all of this together. Does that make sense a little bit? Okay. Sometimes you guys you're told what to do, but not the why behind it. And I think the why behind things is important. For me, I need that to make connections. So to practice things, sometimes it's important to use a familiar text. So I'm going to use a familiar text, The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. How many of you guys is this familiar to? Every single one of you would have had your hand raised. Because it was what? It was part of your e-learning. If you did your e-learning, then you watched a YouTube video of this book being read to you, right? So it should be familiar to all of you. If not, you might want to go back and do that lesson on e-learning. Just a thought. Okay, so I'm going to read this story to you, and then we're going to practice going through this process. I'm not going to show you the pictures because we need to practice visualizing. So I'm not showing you the pictures. Also, my book is falling apart. So if anybody really loves me and wants to buy me new picture books for Christmas, that'd be awesome. My maiden name is actually in this book. It was like one of the first books I bought when I went into teaching. So that's how I know it's really old. This book is probably like 16, 17 years old, which explains why it's stained and falling apart. So that's okay though. It just means it means more to me, right? It's an antique. All right, here we go. Just listen, and we're going to answer some questions. Ready? Everybody knows the story of the three little pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault that we wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in once upon a time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold. I ran out of sugar. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a house of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called, little pig, are you in?" No answer. I was just about to go home without the cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. That's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed a great sneeze. And do you know what? The whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of the pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the whole time. Seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw. So I ate it. Think of it as a big cheeseburger just lying there. I was feeling a little better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar. So I went to the next neighbor's house. This neighbor was the first little pig's brother. He was a little smarter, but not much. He had built his house of sticks. I rang the bell on the stick house. Nobody answered. So I called, Mr. Pig, are you in?" He yelled back, "Go away, Wolf, you can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin. I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. When the dust cleared, there was the second little pig, dead as a doornail, Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out in the open. So I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was getting a little bit better, And I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family. He built his house of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called Mr. Pig, Mr. Pig, are you in? And do you know what that rude little porker answered? Get out of here, wolf! Don't bother me again. Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar, and he wouldn't even give me one little cup for my dear old sweet granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed once again. Then the third pig yelled, "And your old granny can go sit on a pin." Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course I was trying to break down the pig store, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. The rest, they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound very exciting. So they jazzed up the story with all of that huff and puff and blow your house down, and they made me the big bad wolf. That's it, the real story. I was framed. But maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar. Okay, so that is our story. So let's go through our pyramid really quickly. Step 1 is to retell. So take a look. Who are the characters? Shout them out. Who are the characters?
The big bad wolf.
Wolf,
Piggy one.
pigs, grandma,
The cops.
cops, news reporters. Okay, what is the setting? Where does it take place?
Wolves live.
Where the pigs live, where the wolf lives.
The grandma's house, the wolf's house.
Yeah, the jail,
Yeah.
right? Let's go in order. What are the events? It starts out with the wolf wanting to make a, he runs out of sugar. So then he goes to the first pig's house made out of straw. He knocks on the door, no one answers. He sneezes, the house goes down. The pig is, so he eats the pig and then goes to the second house, which is made out of sticks. He sneezes, the house falls down. He then again eats the pig. He goes to the third house that's made out of bricks. The pig says, "Don't come in." He says something mean about his granny. So the wolf gets upset. The wolf gets upset, throws a fit, gets arrested, and he says he's framed, right? And now it ends with him in jail. What is one of the problems? What's the problem of this story?
He wants sugar.
He needs a cup of sugar, right? What is the solution?
He eats pigs.
He goes to ask his neighbors and then ends up eating the pigs, right? It's not a very good solution, but that's what happens. Main idea. What is the main idea? This whole story, what is it about?
The guy trying to get a cup of sugar, but
The wolf needed a cup of sugar, but getting
framed.
framed instead, right? So what sort of things could you visualize while I was reading? What sort of things did you picture?
Pigs. Him walking down the road to the next neighbor's house.
Him walking to the pig's house and visualize the pigs, what they look like. What else?
Him asking for that cup of sugar.
Asking for cups of sugar. You know what I visualized when he ate the second pig? Like this huge fat wolf walking down with two, like, looked like he was pregnant with like twins. You know what I mean? With 2 pigs inside of him. It would look like me after Thanksgiving dinner times 10. What else? What else did you visualize maybe?
The dead pigs and the debris.
The dead pigs and the debris. Okay, so you're visualizing as I'm reading. It's like a movie playing in your head. The next one, step 4 question. What sort of questions could you ask yourself as we read? I mean, I know this isn't a very difficult text, but what sort of things could you ask yourself as you read?
Why couldn't you just get the sugar after you blew the house down?
Why did he just go in and get the sugar after he blew the house down? Good question.
guess he could have.
What other questions? Questions. What other questions? Why didn't he go to the store? What other questions? Is he telling the truth? Like, that's my question. Who's right? Because we read the pig's version, we read the wolf's version.
I think pigs are dramatic.
Who's-
The wolf is right.
Who's right in it, right? And oftentimes when there's a story, you get both sides of the story, and then somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Well, they're both different.
Okay,
because-
so questions, any other questions about the text as we read it? That you could have asked yourself. Why did the author choose to write this story? That's a question I might have.
Why did you choose the
Right?
wolf?
Yeah, why did he choose the wolf? Why did he choose? So those are questions. So then step 5 to synthesize is when you put all of that stuff together. So if you were to answer a question, it's not obvious. It's not who's the main character, what's the main setting. But it's a question where you have to put some of that stuff together to make an inference. Like, why did the author choose to write this story? So you would put together what you visualize and what happened and some of the questions you might ask to make that answer. That's synthesizing. When you put all of that stuff together to answer those higher level questions. Does that make sense a little bit? And then that's where your inferences come into play. You're putting all that together to make those inferences to ask those questions. Okay, so let me pause this video really quick before we move on to the next thing we're going to do.